Good morning, Friday the 13th of November, and excuse me a minute, that just took my breath away a wee bit. Good morning, Friday the 13th of November, and Men's Mental Health and Physical Health Month, bringing awareness to males' health. We do get a little bit of bad press about not being the best communicators in the world, and develop that. Excuse me a minute. Good morning, Tina. Excuse me a minute. That's good morning. Okay. Forgive me. Let me just get my focus again. I'm allowing myself. Right. Good morning. And take 3. Good morning. I'm repeating myself. Friday the 13th of November, and Men's Mental Health Month, Mental and Physical Health Month, and Movember. Yes, Tina, it is a tad on the chilly side this morning. The River Clyde has dropped its temperature somewhat. So, following on from yesterday, good morning, Andy. Yesterday, the vlog was around about being mindful of where you set your intention. Thoughts, feelings, action, anything that we think about creates a feeling, and that feeling then creates an action. Depending on what we think about, depends on how we feel, depends on how the action will be. So if we're focusing on a memory or a thought or something that brings us discomfort, a few moments ago I started to focus on how cold this was. Now I'm focusing on talking to you, and I can hardly notice how cold it is. But if you imagine in your imagination something that brings you joy, something that pleases you, something that aesthetically when you see it, it brings you some kind of happiness inside. So for me it's puppies or dogs or Ralph. When I think about Ralph, I just can't help but smile. When I think about last weekend going up Ben Nevis, it makes me smile. Well, 95% of it. There were some things that I can think back on that I have a little bit of judgment on, and the judgment that I have in that isn't that conducive to me feeling more expansive. It's quite a contractive association to it. Morning, Jamie. Hope you're well up in Peterhead. So, what you focus on in your mind, what you think about, has a chemical component to it, an emotional content, shall we say. So when you think about something that brings you joy, which I'm repeating from yesterday, but whatever that might be, like close your eyes right now and think about something that makes you smile inside versus something that might bring you discomfort. So imagine a wee puppy in your arms, wee jaw, wee kitten, something new and playful. The boundless love of a newborn baby, something that brings you absolute joy. Yet that newborn baby, when it's screaming uncontrollably and you don't know what that helpless child is needing, those screams from the room could be causing you discomfort, perhaps because that's resonating with some primal need within yourself that was never met, or the fact that you feel as if you're being driven mad because you've fed the baby, you've changed the baby's nappy, you've done everything that you can to support that child, but it might stimulate some feeling of helplessness inside you. And when you imagine that feeling could be quite a constrictive feeling. So following on, that was yesterday. If you didn't watch yesterday, that's a kind of brief introduction of what yesterday was. But chemicals, we can become dependent on our own biochemical factory that lives inside us. The biggest drug dealer you will ever meet in your life is not Pablo Escobar, it's you. Because every thought that you have or we have creates a chemical component to it. So you have a thought, you get a prescription. You have a thought, you get a prescription, and it's super, super fast. You know, for an example, if there was something lurking in this water and it started to wrap itself around this ankle of mine, I would be out this water like Linford Christie, right? You know, this swamp creature that I am, this overweight guy, would be out of this water like super, super fast. So what we need to start paying attention to is how habitualised we've become to our thinking. And is that thinking constructive to our development, or is it destructive to our development? You know, one of the biggest killers is stress, for both male and female, and indeed children now. You know, our adolescents and our children, because I work with children in a school environment, is stress. You know, little guys, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, are suffering from stress and anxiety. I don't remember anybody when I was a wee 12-year-old guy that had stress or anxiety. We just were. So we've got this pandemic of stress, and stress is the number one killer, certainly worldwide, I believe. And the chemicals that are behind stress, you know, cortisol, adrenaline, they're very, very good for a short-term fix, to utilise it to get you out of a fearful situation. But if those chemicals are prolonged, we then stay in fight, flight or freeze. And freeze is as debilitating as fight if we don't manage those chemicals effectively. And they can debilitate us. And let me just come back a minute. I just caught how cold it was. Stress, cortisol, negative debilitating hormones that, if they're allowed to flood our system for a prolonged period of time, that can result in a negative health conditions. So how do we start to manage those chemicals? How can we start to manage those chemicals? And how can we start to reframe and refocus on our narrative to create a happier, more joyful, more awakened way of being in our environment, than being constantly caught up in negative moaning and complaining? If not at the external, internal world has become a very tight, dark place to inhabit. And we're socially distanced this morning. There we are. You're on live. Social distance, social distance. Good morning, world. Address the nation, Mr. Cleland. You still think about the Scotland score? Now tell me, Mr. Cleland, what does that do internally to your internal frame of reference and your narrative? What does that bring you? Brings you a feeling of joy. So by pride and satisfaction. So Lewis is over there thinking about the Scotland score last night and how that Scotland score brings him a feeling of joy and pride and satisfaction. So what can you focus on that's going to bring you a feeling of joy, a feeling of satisfaction, a feeling of pride, rather than being caught up by your own internal narrative that may be negative? How can we change the direction of our thoughts? Well, it's a lot easier than you might think, but you've really got to work it. It works if you work it, it won't if you don't. You know, when you're feeling particularly negative or perhaps low moods, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to invite you to feel into your physiology. Check out your physiology. Is your shoulders dropped? How are you walking? How are you facing into your reality? What way are you navigating your world based on your internal frame of reference? Now, if you are feeling low and you know you're feeling down, perhaps change your physiology, change how you're walking, change your posture, lift yourself up, start facing into the world with a more positive mental attitude. Well, changing your physiology, changing how you're walking into the world, right? And just start smiling and start feeling it. And then start to bring that feeling into your body and increase that feeling. Feel it coming through you, feel it pulsing through your veins, feel it pulsing through you, and change your direction of thought from looking at something which is perhaps negative, that's bringing you down, that's wearing on your mental health. Oh, we're out of the water. That was a quick 10 minutes. So Change your direction of thought. If your thought's looking down onto something that's bringing you pain, and you can look over there at something that's bringing you joy, I suggest that you change your internal mindset to something that's going to bring you more satisfaction throughout the day. Men's Mental Health Month, Movember, live from the Clyde in Lanark. I wish you a great day. Have a great